You're listening to the Dare to Love podcast with your hosts, Sonica Tinker and Christian Peterson, founders of LoveWorks.
Hi, and welcome to the podcast. This is Christian Peterson talking. I will be your host today. Today, we are going to be talking about the situation where you want to work on your relationship, but your partner doesn't or is unwilling to work on your relationship with you. And that has become very relevant. It is an issue that Sonica and I, as relationship coaches, have been faced with myriads of times, hundreds and hundreds of times. And just in the last few weeks, we have been contacted by 5 or 6 individuals who have presented that exact issue to us. They basically tell us, I feel we really need to work on our marriage or our relationship. I know we need it, and my partner just doesn't want to engage, doesn't want to do it with me, says there's no need, or no matter what I do, it seems like I can't make any headway on that. So I don't even know, what does that mean? Does that mean we can't? What do I do? So on this podcast, I am going to give you some ideas for how to think about that, a little bit of background, and some ideas for how you can talk to your partner if you're the one who really want to work on your relationship, but your partner doesn't. And I'll tell you, one thing that is, from our point of view, that is heartbreaking about that situation is that very often this is how marriages or relationships break up or end in divorce. I cannot tell you how many people we talk to who have come and told us, well, my partner did say for a long time that we should go get coaching or do a workshop or go to therapy. And, I just kind of blew it off, or I didn't think it was that important until it was too late. It is quite common for people to come to us after it's close to being too late, after their partner says, well, if you don't want to do something, I'm going to split up, or I'm moving out, or I'm done, or I'm filing for divorce. And, that's just heartbreaking to us, because 9 times out of 10, that didn't have to happen, and something could have been done earlier. Now, if you're the one who wants to or suggests to your partner that you do some sort of work on your relationship, whether it's going to counseling or calling someone like us for a coaching session or buying a ticket to a workshop, and your partner just doesn't want to do it. Maybe you've heard some of these reasons. I'll give you a few of the reasons that people have told us that their partner says, for why they don't want to engage in the broad, I'm using as a broad umbrella term here, working on our relationship. That can mean many things, of course. We hear things like partners are saying, we don't need to do this, or we'll get over it. Or sometimes what that really means is you'll get over it. Or, it'll blow over. It's just a passing phase. Every relationship has its ups and downs. It's not really that big of a deal. It'll sort itself out. Some people say, they don't want to talk to, in quotes, to strangers about private affairs. It's no one's business. Strangers in this case can be a coach, a therapist, a workshop leader, or even a trusted friend. Some people say it's really embarrassing. Many of us carry the belief inside that it's really embarrassing to even need help with a relationship problem. We tell ourselves, either consciously or unconsciously, that we should be able to figure that sort of stuff out on our own. So, yeah, I can't bring myself to engage professional help for it. A lot of people will say, that's going to cost way too much money, or that's going to take much too much time. Some people say, I don't want to be put on the spot. I don't want anybody else to know on it. I don't want to find myself in the spotlight of scrutiny by a coach or a workshop leader or other participants in some sort of group setting. People might say, I don't want to air our dirty laundry. That shouldn't be put out anywhere. Some people say, I don't want to do a workshop, period. I'm not putting myself in that space ever. Sometimes your partner might not even give you any real or understandable, at least understandable to you, reason. You might just be met with silent resistance, also known as stonewalling. A lot of people just have tremendous resistance and haven't examined it inside themselves enough to actually verbalize what is their resistance. So if you're the one who wants to work on it, you might have been met with just silence or evasive answers. And then again, some people just say, hey, this is just the way I am, or this is just the way you are, or this is just the way we are. That's not going to change. This is just the way I am. I'm sure you've heard that. Maybe you've been the one to say that. Maybe it's your partner who said, hey, what you see is what you get. This is just how I am. Deal with it. This is how it is. Now, it's probably not going to come as a surprise to you if I say that Sonika and I are definitely partial to relationship work and to personal growth work, because that's what we do. We've devoted our lives to doing that. We know that to be an activity that has tremendous return on investment when it comes to overall happiness and overall quality of life. As we always say, the key to a happy life and a life full of quality is happy relationships. One of the principles that Sonika and I live by, and that we also teach, is that we don't, when we're talking about a couple here, that we don't move forward with any big or significant actions or new decisions until we're on the same page. And, we teach people how to get on the same page, because sometimes that's not so easy. However, we do have one exception to that principle, and that is when it comes to getting support for your relationship. You don't, in this case, want to wait till you both agree on the fact that you need some sort of help. And I'll give you, when I was thinking about this, it reminded me of when I was a young man. I lived in Denmark, and I was drafted, and I spent a year in the Royal Danish Navy. And one of the things I did on the big Navy ship was I was a lookout. So on the starboard side, typically on the right side of the ship up front, I was a lookout. So I was standing out there in all kinds of weather with all my rain gear and a pair of binoculars, looking for, for, in quotes, we only did drills, but in quotes, enemy submarines or enemy ships or enemy airplanes. Now, of course, there was also a lookout on the port side of the ship, on the left side of the ship. And whenever either of us lookouts would see something, we would call it down to the operations central, and they would take the proper actions for it. That was about my pay grade. What they did with it, I was just a lookout. But the point being is, from the captain's point of view, he's going to take an action when either the left side or the right side lookout reports a threat. He's not going to wait for both lookouts to report the same threat before he takes action. Because if he waited for both of them to see whatever enemy crafts are in there, our ship would probably be sunk before he ever got to do anything. Because, if you're on the starboard side, you can only see 180 degrees. And if you're on the port side of the ship, you can only see 180 degrees pretty much. And it's like that in our relationships. None of us see the full picture. It's as if we can see, I don't know if it's 180 degrees, but I see things from my point of view. My partner sees things from her or their point of view. And we don't want to wait till we both see the, in quotes, threat. And in this conversation, a threat is basically when one person in a partnership, in a couple, says, hey, there is something here that is not working for me. And as far as I'm concerned, for us. But even if it's just one person that says, this is not working for me, you should take some sort of action. Even, you can say, even in the case where you, maybe the listener here, maybe you are perfectly happy with how things are in your marriage or in your relationship. But even if that's the case, if you have an unhappy partner, well, you have an unhappy partner. And that certainly contributes to an unhappy situation for you. And it's worth asking, are you okay with that? Are you okay with just moving on while your partner is unhappy with the state of affairs in your relationship? So to sum that up, our rule of thumb is, if one of you sees a threat or has an issue that they think should be worked on in your relationship, do it. Ask someone. And, there are people like us who do workshops and coaching. There are therapists. Find a trusted friend. Take some sort of action to start working on your relationship. Now, I want to give you a few more thoughts about what can be behind it when someone has resistance or is unwilling to do work on your relationship. And I want to say, I'm just going to stay with that umbrella term here, work on your relationship. These are the things that often don't get said out loud, but we know from having talked to thousands of people about intimate relationships that these are often the thoughts or fears or concerns that go on in the background. So Often, this is really about having a fear of embarrassment or public humiliation. For example, Sonica and I, we do both individual coaching, but we also do weekend workshops in a group setting. And often, someone who has resistance to doing work on their relationship is they make a picture of that it's going to be embarrassing, or they are going to be publicly humiliated somehow, hung out to dry. Which reminds me that we did a podcast episode a little while back ago called "What's So Great About Workshops," and we talked some about what kind of the false image we often make about what it means to go to a workshop in a group setting, and this happens all the time when it comes to working on our relationship. For example, there was a woman who reached out to us this week who really wanted to come to one of our workshops, and her husband did not want to come. And it turns out that really the picture he's making is that this is going to be all about put on the spot, like I mentioned, or being publicly humiliated, or having to divulge personal, intimate details in public, and being put in situations against his will. So basically being not having a choice and being forced to do things against his will. And you can go back and listen to that episode. But just suffice it to say that in our workshops, at least, nobody ever gets put on the spot. Nobody ever gets forced to do anything they don't want to do. And as a matter of fact, our style of relationship work focuses very little on on you speaking all the things that aren't working in your relationship and what has happened in the past. We're a very forward-looking philosophy of relationship work. And in our workshops, you can actually attend our workshop, and we have had many people do that without ever having to say anything about what's, in quotes, wrong about your relationship or the things that you have done in the past that you aren't proud of. You can go through an entire workshop and not say anything about that and still gain tremendous new skills and insights to come away with. Another thing that's often running in the background is simply the fear of failure. We humans just seem to have a pretty serious fear of failing, and going to a workshop or seeking out any kind of help with our relationships often get put in that category for us. It's as if I'm saying, if I need to go get help with this, that means I must have failed. There must be something wrong with me that I couldn't figure this out on my own, and now I have to go get help. So from that point of view, it's better to not start looking and investigating, because that might confirm to me that I failed. And we, of course, don't see it that way, although I can totally appreciate that point of view, because I used to think just that myself. It was one of the things that kept me from reaching out for coaching and support for many, many years of my life. And, the price I paid for that was just suffering many more years in silence without reaching out for help. And because of this fear of failure, we often do what I sometimes will talk to men about this, because it's a very common trait for men, is that we operate on what I call the emergency principle. Like, that basically means we don't take serious action or swift action until there is an actual emergency. That means if I'm sitting in my house and somebody says, "Doesn't it smell like smoke here?" I'm like, "No, it's probably nothing." And then someone says, "I think I'm seeing smoke out there." I'm like, it's probably the neighbor's house. And it's not until somebody is yelling fire and I actually see that my couch is on fire, that's when I begin to take action. I know that's, of course, a little exaggerated, but we know this to be the case because so many people come to us reach out for relationship work or relationship support when there's an immediate bad thing about to happen. So, such as divorce, or a partner that has gotten so mad that they blew up in my face, or, there's just imminent threat. Only then will we do something about it. When that happens, it's typically after a long time of other signs of threats, other signs that something is not quite cool. For example, our partner having said many times, we really need to do something. We really need to go get some help. And maybe I just didn't pick up on it. I chose to ignore it. I didn't think it was reasonable. I didn't agree with it. And it wasn't until my house was on fire that I said, "Oh yeah, we should definitely do something. Let's take action now." And that's one of the reasons why we shared that principle in the beginning about, you don't have to agree with your partner about needing help before you do something about it. It's like, it's kind of like if you ignore these signs of threats or these signs of, just unhappiness, it's like you're definitely ignoring it at your own peril, because those signs are the warning signs of breakup or of divorce. I know we don't think that in the beginning, but that's where it often ends. And I'm not saying that to sound gloomy or doomsday-like when it comes to relationships. It's just a fact that so many relationships end on this account. Now, another reason that partners will often say they don't want to work on it is simply the fear of admitting or telling their own truth. Sometimes a partner might really be done with the relationship and really don't see a point in working on it, but also they haven't quite gotten to found the courage to admit to themselves to actually say that out loud. Maybe, often it comes with a whole host of consequences. If you're beginning to imagine the end of your marriage or the end of your relationships, anybody who's, ever watched a friend go through a divorce, or if you've gone through a divorce yourself, particularly if you have children, you'll know that there are huge lifelong consequences of splitting up. So often someone will have a clear sense, really, that that's what's going on, but they just haven't quite gotten to the point where they could say that out loud, either to themselves or their partner. Plus, none of us ever want to hurt our partners, which can sometimes be a reason to say, instead of saying clearly, I don't want to work on it, or I think we're done, or this, I just don't want to. We say something like, I don't know about this, or maybe it'll blow over by itself, or can't we just see what happens? Sometimes resistance to doing the relationship work is simply because we have such discomfort with the emotions that we think will arise if we start working and talking about our relationship. A lot of us, this is not exclusively true for men by any means, but it's often men, and I'm speaking from that camp myself, have a tremendous discomfort and are not used to intense emotions, whether it's intense anger or tears and sadness or fear or loud voices. Many of us are just intensely uncomfortable with that, and we will do pretty much anything to avoid putting ourselves in situations where it could get intense. And sometimes we know this from people who have come to our workshops, who have after they've gone through our workshops and found out that it was totally fine, and often that they actually had a really good time, will tell us that beforehand they were really afraid that it was going to get, it's going to get loud and full of tears and big outbursts. And whereas there certainly can be tears and as well as laughter in any group setting or in a private setting as well, I personally consider it something that it's a skill I just need to develop, is to get more comfortable with other people's emotions as well as my own. And I'm saying that from a very personal point of view, because I used to be someone, I'm not actually kidding you, I used to tell myself that I was probably born without the feelings of sadness and depression and anger, because I just never felt that. And really the thing was, I was right about that. I never felt that, but it was just so thoroughly suppressed in me that I really never even felt it. And because I didn't feel it in myself, I was extremely uncomfortable with anybody else in front of me feeling sadness or anger, as well as huge joy. That too made me really uncomfortable. So I personally consider it a skill to learn in order to master relationships, in order to create satisfying relationships. And that's not just I'm not just talking about my intimate ones here. That goes for my friends, my community, my workplace as well, is that I can deal with emotions and when energy gets intense. And then there's one more thing I'm going to mention here before I give you some tips about how you can talk to a partner who doesn't initially at least want to do work on your relationship. And that is the differences we have observed between men and women. And the usual disclaimer here is that of course doesn't cover 100% of men and 100% of women. We know we're generalizing, and you can see if this hits home for you. Generally speaking, women tend to be a lot more relationship oriented than men. They tend to center more of their attention and more of their efforts on relationships, both family relationships, intimate relationships, relationships with friends. They just have more of an eye for relationship, a natural eye for the workings of relationship. Whereas men are often more project oriented. They look at getting things done, accomplishing certain projects, and they tend to be more self oriented. And no, that doesn't mean that they're all selfish. It just means we tend to look at things more in terms of what I can do to XYZ more than focusing on the relationships around me. And so I remember I once had a gentleman who came to one of our workshops who afterwards pulled me aside, said, in relationship, I always have the idea that, I've always thought that my wife is much better at relationships than I am. She can just speak that language. And, to her, it seems like such a natural thing. And to me, it often seems like a foreign language and I don't know where to put myself. So when she asked me about going to a relationship workshop, I just had the sense of going into like scary territory, like almost like going into hostile territory. Because I made the picture of, this room full of people like my wife who were already really well versed in this language and knew their way around it and felt comfortable with relationship and intimacy and communication, and that those are not really my strong suits. So I was very hesitant to coming in here. And I think he spoke for a lot of men in that case who feel as if they're going into very foreign territory. And like I mentioned before, that often gives rise to making all kinds of, of like false and scary images of what it means to engage in relationship work, whether it's sitting down with a counselor or whether it's showing up in a group session for a workshop or a seminar. And to make it a little crass, a wife asking a husband to come to a relationship workshop can sometimes be like a husband asking a wife to come on a fishing trip. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that jokingly, but there's also some truth to it that to a man going to an intimacy or a relationship workshop can sound like a very foreign idea, maybe scary even. Just like, if for a woman to go on the man's fishing trip can sound like scary or boring or pointless or just way out of your frame of reference or your comfort zone. Okay, now I'd like to share some ideas for how you can talk to a partner if you're the one who wants to initiate doing some sort of relationship work and your partner, at least initially, says no or doesn't want to or is resistant to it. That doesn't mean necessarily that you have to give up on that idea. It often just means that we need to find some different ways to approach the subject and use some better ways to talk about this with our partner. So here are some simple ideas for that. First great idea is simply to ask directly for what it is you would like. Say you would like your partner to come with you to, let's just say, a relationship workshop, because that's what we do. You could just say straight up, would you be willing to come with me to this workshop? I would really appreciate it. It would mean a lot to me if you would do that with me. Now, your partner might say, I don't know, maybe, I don't know about that. And you could say, well, what would it take for you to be a yes, to be willing to join me? Like, what would it take for you? Another way to say that is, what do you need in order to give me what I need? And you'll sometimes find that there's kind of a little bargaining in there, that there's something your partner needs in order to say yes to giving you what you need, which in this example is coming with you to a relationship workshop. It could be, I really need to have some time by myself. It could be, I really need us to go on another weekend where it's just about having fun or laying on the beach. We just won't know until we ask. Another great way to communicate is to make sure that you tell your partner how you feel. How does it make you feel when you get to do things like that together, or when your partner is a yes to an idea like that? So you could say, for example, and this is a good idea, you really like tune into yourself. Imagine your partner saying yes to your request, and then just picture you two doing it together and really feel into how does that feel to you when you do things like that together. And then you share that and you might say something like, it just makes me feel so loved and cared for. I just love you more, and I feel like we're such a great team when we do this kind of thing together, or when we work together. Would you be willing to come with me to this weekend? It just has me feel so loved and cared for. That's a great way to talk to someone, because often if your partner is making a picture in their mind about what this is that isn't necessarily accurate, let's just say, partners will often do something for you that they wouldn't do for themselves. So I could be someone who I wouldn't go on a fishing trip myself, but if you tell me that, if I learn from you that it just makes you feel so happy and you feel so in love, and that you love how much it feels like a team when we go on a fishing trip together, I might very well be willing to do it for you and to give that experience to you. Because most partners, as partner, I love giving good experiences to my partner. Now, you can also get creative and simply offer something. If you have a sense that it's a really big deal or would be a big sacrifice for your partner to join you in a weekend like that, you could propose something like, hey, how about on this weekend, we're going to go to this relationship workshop. But then on another weekend, next month or 6 months out or whatever, I'm coming with you to a weekend of your choice. Then you pick the destination or the activity for that weekend. What do you think about that? And no matter how you ask your partner, it's really great to come from a committed place inside yourself. So I say, commit, invite, let go, and take action. And what I mean by that is, it's really great for you first to find the commitment in yourself to do something for your relationship. The opposite of that, just for illustration, is when you say, I'm going to do something for my relationship if my partner says yes. And, we talk to a lot of people who end up doing nothing because they have a resistant partner. It appears as if they can't do anything. And then that's a really great way to get very resentful with your partner, because it then appears as if you're not doing anything because he or she keeps saying no. So if you find the commitment in yourself, from that place, invite your partner to come with you. Then let go of their response. So that means you be willing for them to say yes or no. Because if you've already found the commitment to do something about it in yourself, then you're still going to do that, whether they say yes or no. And then you take action. How that often looks in our case is, someone might, for example, say, I bought a ticket to this workshop, or I am going to go to this relationship workshop that my friend told me about. I think it would be really useful. It would be useful for me to learn better relationship skills, and I think it would be really great for us. I would really love it if you would come with me. Would you be willing to come with me? It's okay if you don't want to. I'm still going to go because I think it's going to be hugely useful. And then you either go with your partner or you go by yourself. So I'm just going to repeat that little string here. Commit, invite, let go, and then take action. That is a great stance from which to come to someone that you want to enroll into any activity, really. It is a great idea also to have a conversation, if there is an opening for it, with your partner about how do they feel about how your relationship is going. Ask them how satisfied they are, and if they see anything that they would like to change, or ask them, how do you propose that we proceed with our relationship? Or what would you like to see for our relationship this next year, or these next 6 months, or these next 5 years? Be willing to hear what their proposals are, So it's a good idea to say something like, how do you propose we deal with our marriage or our current relationship or how we're doing? Now, if all you get is no, 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 and no, 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 you can choose to turn up the heat. For example, we once had a couple that came to us where the wife shared that she had turned up the heat by telling her partner, who, one of the issues they had in their 20-year marriage was that he was drinking. And his addiction to alcohol really had an impact on their relationship and the mood in their house. And at some point, after having tried many other things, this woman had told her husband, look, it's okay if you don't want to stop drinking. There's nothing I can do about that, and that is your choice. I'm okay with that. But if you keep drinking, I do not want to be in relationship with you. I would love for us to figure this out. I want us to be together, but I need you to stop drinking or else I'm leaving. So it was, she turned up the heat. She was not willing to negotiate on that aspect anymore. In this particular couple's case, it worked. I guess you could say it put a fire under his butt. He did indeed stop drinking. They did show up to a workshop and were floored actually floored how fun and educational it was. This was probably 7 or 8 years ago, and they're still doing great. So that story turned out well, turning up the heat. And when you turn the heat up all the way, it's basically known as an ultimatum. We're doing this now or else. We're going to work on our relationship one way or the other. It's not an option for us not to. But you could still open the door for negotiating how you do it. You could say, we are working on this relationship and we're starting it now. Now, I'm open to different ways we could do it. You could choose that. You could say we're going to counseling. You could say we're going to a workshop. You can say we're talking to a friend, or you could say we're taking this online class. I'm okay with either, but we're doing something now. And if you're not willing to do that, I can respect that, but then I'm moving on. That's turning up the heat to where it reaches ultimatum status. All right, so I hope all of that was useful to you, and you can use some of those communication tips or some of those background thoughts about what's really going on often when we meet resistance. I hope you can use that to a good end and to initiate productive conversations with your partner, even if you have a resistant partner. And I want to encourage you so much that even if you have a resistant partner, even if you can't make any inroads with him or her, that you don't take it as a stop for you to do something. Like I know in Sonicas, in our workshops, it's not just for couples, although many people will automatically assume that as soon as they see the word relationship or communication, but it's not. In our workshops, there is always a mixture of individuals and couples. There are people who are married who came without their partner. There are people who are newly single. There are people who have been single for 10 years. There are people who are newlyweds. There are people who are just dating, and there are people who have been married for 30 years and anything in between. So don't ever take it as the end and that you can't do anything, even if your partner is resistant. And we also want to encourage you to just keep looking for the openings. That's another principle, another principle Sonica and I operate by is going for the opening. So even if initially when you ask, there seems to be a closed door, look for the next opening. Look for the next opening. And you're always welcome to give us a call or to contact us via our website on loveworksforyou.com. And we're always happy to support you. It doesn't cost anything to pick up the phone and chat with us. And if there's anything we can do to help that conversation along, we're of course happy to support you with that. All right, friends, that's all we're going to have for today. I hope that was useful, and we look very forward to seeing you on the next episode.
You've been listening to the Dare to Love podcast with your host, Sonica Tinker and Christian Peterson, founders of LoveWorks. If you found this valuable, please hit the share button and share with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or your other favorite hangouts. You can find more about Sonica and Christian's work at loveworksforyou.com.